This happened a few weeks ago when I began my new night shift as an ER nurse. I thought I knew what to expect. I'd worked in the ER for a while, but this place felt different at night. The long corridors were dimly lit, and the machines beeped eerily in the silence. I heard whispers from other nurses about strange things happening at night. I didn't believe them, until things started to change. One night I was in a quiet part of the hospital. I was checking on a patient when I heard laughter. It was soft but clear, children's laughter. I stopped. There shouldn't be any kids around. My heart raced as I tried to figure out where it was coming from. I walked toward a storage closet. When I opened the door, the laughter stopped. Inside, only stacks of supplies greeted me, nothing unusual. I felt uneasy but shook it off. I had rounds to finish. As days passed, odd occurrences piled up. One night I found a patient's chart had changed. Medications I had ordered were different. I checked the computer, but it was correct. My stomach twisted. I wanted to talk to someone, but how could I? I didn't want to sound crazy. Then the lights flickered one evening. The chill went through me as I noticed some patients mumbling about the girl in the hallway. They insisted she was watching them. I rolled my eyes, thinking they were just dreaming. But the tension at work built up. I felt tired all the time. Maybe I was just overthinking things. Each night I tried to focus, keep my mind straight. One night after a long shift, I walked back from the break room. Suddenly I saw a shadow dart around the corner. My heart dropped into my stomach. I rushed to the corner, but the hallway was empty. Then I heard it again, the laughter, closer this time. It sent a chill down my spine. I froze, not knowing what to do. Then I heard a soft voice softly say, "Help me." It was right behind me. I turned around, but no one was there. Panic filled my chest. I took a deep breath and continued down the hallway, my body wired with fear. On my next shift, I was alone again. I felt eyes on me as I passed patients. They all stared at the wall, mumbling. I wanted to ask them what was wrong, but every time I approached, they got eerily quiet. That night I heard the laughter again. This time it echoed through the air. I couldn't find the source. My heart pounded as I called out, "Hello, who's there?" The laughter stopped, replaced by a stone-cold silence. Then I heard it again, right next to me. "Help me." Panic seized me. I felt the world spin. I turned quickly, but still nobody was there. I bolted back to the nurse's station, my stomach churning. My eyes scanned for a familiar face, but I was alone. Just me and the whispers of the night. Then I noticed something. A patient's door was ajar, and the light was flickering inside. Their chart read, "Do not disturb." My heart raced. If I opened that door, what would I find? I took a step forward. The laughter returned, louder, echoing through the halls as if it began to surround me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting. And then I remembered the chart, the changes, the girl. I was never alone at night. I stood outside the patient's door, the flickering light casting strange shadows on the hallway walls. The laughter grew louder, echoing like a taunt. My heart raced. Should I really go in? I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The light flickered wildly, illuminating a dim room. The patient lay in bed, eyes closed, but the air felt charged. A chill crept over me. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. I stepped inside, the laughter fading into silence, replaced by an oppressive stillness. The patient stirred. I glanced at the chart on the foot of the bed, my hand shaking as I reached for it. "Do not disturb" felt like a warning hanging in the air. The chart was filled with scribbles, arrows pointing to different sections, but nothing about the medications, just more confusion. As I read, a cold breeze swept through the room. I shivered and turned around. "Is anyone here?" I asked, half hoping someone would answer, but the patient remained still, oblivious. Then I saw it. A shadow darted behind a curtain. My breath stopped. I hesitated for a moment, weighing whether to investigate further. The laughter from earlier echoed in my ears. What if it was just a trick of the light? But I needed to know. I approached the curtain, my heart pounding with each cautious step. As I pulled it back, I was met with emptiness. just the slight sway of the curtain. I sighed, relief flooding me, but it still felt off. I turned back to the patient's chart and noticed something. A date highlighted in red. March 14th, it read. My stomach dropped. That was today's date. Somehow it was marked as special. What happened on that day? I muttered. I needed to understand. I felt an uneasy pull, as if the answers lay deeper within this room. Suddenly the lights flickered and the laughter returned. More sinister this time. I stumbled back and felt a rush of cold air envelop me. I gripped the edge of the bed, my mind racing in panic. "What do you want?" I shouted desperately. And then, I saw her. The girl. She was standing in the corner, her gaze fixed on me, eyes wide and dark. My breath hitched. I couldn't look away. "Help me," she whispered, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "Help you? How?" I replied, my voice trembling. But before I could react, the shadow vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. I blinked, confusion flooding my thoughts. Then everything went dark. The lights went out completely. I fumbled for my phone to turn on the flashlight, but the darkness felt heavy and smothering. I could hear the clock ticking, each moment stretching into an eternity. I didn't want to be alone in that darkness, not anymore. I needed answers, but fear gnawed at me. Who was that girl? Why was she in this hospital? The sound of laughter echoed again, so close it felt like a whisper in my ear. "Help me." The words hung in the air, pulling me deeper into this nightmare. With shivering hands, I turned the doorknob, desperate to escape. And then I heard it. Footsteps approaching from down the hall, echoing in the void. Someone was coming. But was it a nurse or something else? That's when I realized. Maybe I wasn't the only one in danger. The footsteps grew louder, thumping against the cold floor. Panic surged in my chest. I couldn't stay in the dark any longer. I pushed the door open and stepped into the corridor. The light flickered back to life, but it felt more like a warning now. Shadows stretched and twitched along the walls. "Is someone there?" I called out, but there was no answer. The laughter had vanished, leaving only the dull thud of my heart. I needed to figure out what was going on, starting with that patient. I turned back to the room, but the door creaked shut, as if it sensed my hesitation. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob again. It was stuck. I pulled harder, but the door wouldn't budge. An icy whisper brushed against my cheek, sending chills racing down my spine. Suddenly I noticed a flicker of light at the end of the hallway. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. A nurse? I stepped forward, calling out once more, "Hello?" But the voice that answered was not human. "Why did you leave?" It echoed back, a cruel mockery of my inquiry. My breath caught. The laughter returned, filling the hallways, wrapping around me like a shroud. I forced myself to move. The looming darkness threatened to collapse in on me, but I willed my legs to carry me toward the light. With each step, the laughter morphed into screeches, and I could feel something watching from the corners of my vision. My mind raced, desperately trying to rationalize the unexplainable. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself, clutching my phone tight. I needed to find a way out, or at least someone to help. I approached the light, heart pounding like a drum, and turned the corner. What I found wasn't what I expected. A small utility room sat ajar at the end of the hall, the light spilling from within. I peered inside, eager for answers. It was empty, save for a few supplies stacked haphazardly. A sense of dread washed over me, but then I noticed something glinted on the floor. I stepped in cautiously, kneeling to pick up a small silver bracelet. It was delicate, with an inscription that sent chills through me. "Remember me." The girl's face flashed in my mind. I had to find out if this was hers. Just then, a voice echoed down the hall again, but this time it was sharper, more urgent. "Help her!" I froze. "Who?" I shouted, though I hardly expected an answer. The lights began to flicker again, and a figure emerged from the dim end of the corridor. My pulse quickened as I recognized the silhouette. It was her, the girl from the room. "Why are you here?" I croaked. "Find me," she pleaded, reaching out toward me before vanishing once again. I was alone again, the silence almost deafening. My breath came out ragged. What did she want? What had happened on March 14th? I had no answers, only questions that tangled in my mind. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down on me. I had to find the truth before it was too late. I turned back toward the hallway, the bracelet clutched tightly in my hand. That's when I heard it, a low, rumbling growl behind me. Something was approaching, and this time I wasn't sure I could escape, and I spun around, adrenaline flooding my veins. The growl echoed again, deeper this time, vibrating through the air like a warning. My instincts kicked in. I had to get away from whatever that was. The utility room felt too small, too cramped. I bolted back into the hallway. No plan, just pure instinct. I sprinted toward the flickering lights ahead, my feet pounding against the floor. I glanced over my shoulder, but all I saw was darkness. I turned the corner at the end of the corridor, hoping to find an exit or another room to hide. The laughter returned, twisted and dark, swirling in the air. "Help her!" The voice rang out again just above a whisper. Who was she? Why did I need to help? My mind raced with questions I didn't have time to ponder. I stumbled into a larger room. The sight was jarring. Hospital beds lined one side with charts hung at awkward angles. Everything felt wrong. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry bees, flashing on and off, casting strange shadows. I had to focus. I stepped deeper into the room, my heart pounding. As the laughter faded, I instinctively scanned for anything that might help me. A desk in the corner caught my eye. Papers were strewn across its surface, some crumpled and torn. I rushed over, desperate, hoping for clues. I flipped through the papers, searching for anything that might tell me about the girl or what had happened. Most of the notes were illegible, scribbled in a hurry, but one caught my attention. A name. Emily Carter. Beneath it were a list of dates, but one stood out. March 14th. My breath hitched. Was this the girl? The walls sighed, and the lights flickered violently once more. My heart raced, but I couldn't let fear control me. I needed answers. I grabbed the paper and pocketed it, feeling the weight of the mystery pressing down on me. That's when I heard it again. The growl. Closer this time. I could feel the cold brush of something against my skin, like breath. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was paralyzed. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her again, the girl from before, standing at the doorway. "Emily?" I blurted out, but she didn't answer. Instead, she looked back down the hallway, terror in her eyes. "Help!" she mouthed silently, as if the sound itself would bring something dreadful closer. The growl sounded again, a roar that shook the room. I took a step back, glancing at the door behind me. Could I make it out? The girl started to dissolve into shadows, just like before. Panic clawed at my throat. "Wait!" I shouted, but it was too late. She was gone, leaving behind a lingering sadness. I was left alone in the room with only the growling sound closing in on me. I took a deep breath and shot toward the door, but as I reached for the handle, everything went dark. A sense of dread filled the air, and I knew I had run out of time. Everything was dark, thick, and suffocating. I raised my hands in front of me, feeling the cool, smooth surface of the door I had just reached for. Panic surged again, and I pounded on the wood, desperate for light, for safety. "Somebody!" I shouted, my voice breaking in the silence. Then inch by inch light trickled back. The fluorescent bulbs above flickered to life again, casting shadows that danced eerily along the walls. My heart hammered as I turned around, half expecting to see the growling creature emerge from the darkness, but nothing moved. I exhaled, shaking off the weight of fear. The room felt unreal, like it shifted while I was blind. I stepped away from the door and forced myself to look at the space around me. The hospital beds remained empty, but the notes littering the desk seemed to whisper secrets. Rushing back to the desk, I rifled through the papers again. "Emily Carter," I murmured, trying to piece together the puzzle forming in my mind. Why was she important? The dates swam through my thoughts, and the number 14 stood out. March 14th. What was supposed to happen then? Suddenly, I noticed a flash of paper under the desk, partially obscured by dust. I bent down to grab it, heart racing with anticipation. As I pulled it out, the laughter returned, a chilling blend of joy and despair. With a quick glance around, I opened the note. The handwriting was frantic, hastily scrawled. "They took her." My stomach sank. Who were they? And what had they taken? Flashes of Emily's terrified face flared in my mind. The urgent plea in her eyes pulled me in deeper. In that moment, the growl thundered back, now reverberating through the very walls. I stumbled back, clutching the note, feeling the chill seep into my bones. It was like the air itself was alive with malice. I dashed for the door again, this time twisting the handle and bursting into the hallway. My eyes adjusted quickly to the flickering lights. I was back in the corridor, but it felt different now, as if the energy had changed. The laughter had receded, but the sense of dread hung thick. "Emily!" I called out, voice echoing as I sprinted down the hallway. "Where are you?" The answer came in a whisper, cutting through the silence. "Help! Me!" I froze, dread pooling in my chest. It wasn't just in my head. The voice was real. It floated from further down the hall towards a door at the end. As I moved closer, the growl erupted behind me again, a furious, chilling sound that demanded my attention. "Go!" my instincts screamed, but something deeper tugged me forward. The door at the end stood slightly ajar, and I peered inside, breathless. What lay beyond it was unlike anything I had seen yet. A dimly lit room filled with files and monitors. A flickering screen cast a ghostly glow. There, slumped over a desk, was a figure. I couldn't make out who it was, but instinct drove me to step inside. That's when I saw the monitors flash to life, vividly displaying images of Emily. She was there, caught in a loop of dread, pleading with someone unseen. The world jolted around me as I felt the floor beneath shift, a new presence pressing against me. Something lurked behind me, and for the second time that night I was certain I wasn't alone in this terrible place. I turned slowly, heart racing. The air felt thicker, charged. The growl had gotten louder, echoing through the room. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I braced myself and turned, and there it was, a shadowy figure standing just beyond the edge of the light. "What do you want?" I forced out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. It stood still, gazing at me with darkness, a void that swallowed all light around it. In that frozen moment, I felt a sickening understanding creep in. This wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was real, and it was here. My instinct kicked in, and I turned back towards the monitors. The images of Emily flickered like a strobe light, each frame displaying her terror. I had to save her. Just as I stepped back toward the desk, a loud crash echoed from the hallway behind me. My pulse quickened. I dashed into the room, slamming the door shut, hoping it would hold whatever was out there. "Emily?" I called again, urgency fueling my words. I pressed my palms against the monitors, willing them to offer answers. I squinted at the stream of images, searching for clues. Then I noticed a new phrase flashing. Subject 14. Beneath it, handwritten notes scrawled in the margins. Increased agitation, possible transfer. "Transfer?" I muttered, piecing it together. Was Emily being moved somewhere? The implications chilled me to the core. What kind of place was this? What were they doing to her? "Help me," the voice came again, louder this time. It felt like a physical pull, urging me to act, shoving aside my fear. I scanned the room for a way out, something, anything that could lead me to her. The growl surged again, this time blending with the whispers from the monitors, echoing phrases like containment, experiment, and failure. My stomach churned. I needed to confront whatever was behind me. I couldn't let fear dictate my movements. Gathering my courage, I took a deep breath and reached for the door handle. The moment I turned it, the growl erupted into an unsettling roar, reverberating through my bones. The shadow was closer now, its shape indistinct but menacing. I flung open the door, not looking back. The hallway was dark and empty, but I could feel the weight of something watching. The whispers grew louder, their urgency matching my own rising dread. "Emily!" I yelled, the word echoing down the corridor. If I was getting closer, I couldn't stop now. The air crackled with tension as I sprinted away from the desk, retracing the way I'd come. Each step took me deeper into the heart of the unknown, where echoes of Emily's pleas hung thick. Then I heard it, footsteps behind me, heavy, relentless. My heart raced as the growl returned, now close enough to feel the heat radiating from it. I pushed forward knowing I had to find her, and fast. Around the next corner there was another door, a faint light seeping through. I launched for it, praying it would lead me to her. But as I reached for the handle, the air grew colder, the shadows tightening around me. And then, everything went dark. I felt the darkness press in on me, suffocating and oppressive. My heart thundered, drowning out all other sounds. Then, gradually, my senses returned. I blinked against the blackness, trying to make sense of where I was. The faint light from the doorway flickered above me, just out of reach. I stumbled forward, my palms brushing against the cold, rough wall. I could still hear it. The growl, now muffled and distorted, like it was coming from deep within the bowels of the building. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to center myself, then opened them wide, desperate for an escape. With a shaky breath, I pushed myself toward the light. My fingers finally found the door frame and I leaned against it, gasping for air. I peered through the narrow opening and saw a corridor stretching into an equally dark expanse. This was not a place meant for people. An echo of my own voice rang through my mind. "Emily!" I called again, but it came out as little more than a whisper. The stillness that followed felt heavy, almost mocking. But then I heard it, a scraping noise, faint but unmistakable. I stepped back in instinct, but curiosity pulled me forward. I had to know if it was her. I squared my shoulders and stepped into the corridor, heart racing at the thought of seeing her again. I moved cautiously, my footsteps muted against the linoleum floor. The walls were lined with doors, but they were all closed and unmarked. I reached for the nearest handle, knowing I had to try. As I turned it, the door swung open with an unsettling creak. Inside, the room was empty except for a cluster of medical equipment and a single bed in the center. A flickering light hung overhead, casting long shadows across the floor. That's when I saw it. On the wall opposite the bed, a series of photographs were pinned up. I stepped closer, squinting to see better. Each image was of a person. Each one looked terrified, their faces twisted in fear. And then I saw her. Emily. My stomach dropped. I could barely recognize her among the others. Her eyes were wide, screaming silently in the stillness, as if begging for help. I reached out, wanting to touch the image, to somehow break the barrier between the past and the present. But as I did, the door behind me slammed shut. I whipped around, breath hitching in my throat. Panic set in. The whispers from before returned, swirling around me like a storm. Failure. Escape. Containment. Then I heard a voice, a low, gravelly breath behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I turned slowly, bracing myself, knowing whatever was behind me wasn't going to let me leave without a fight. "Who are you?" My voice broke, but I forced the words out. The shadows seemed to ripple as the figure stepped closer, revealing more of its ominous form. I couldn't tell where the darkness ended, and it began. I was trapped, and every instinct urged me to run. "Emily," I whispered, as the figure moved into the light just enough for me to see its features. A twisted version of a person, hunched and menacing. I fought through my fear, an unyielding determination rising within me. But then it grinned, and the world tipped sideways again. The grin seemed to widen impossibly, taking over the shadowy figure's face. It was then that I realized this thing wasn't just a person twisted by fear. It exuded a predatory air, as if it fed on dread and despair. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. I glanced around in a frenzy, searching for something, anything that could be used as a weapon. The medical equipment looked harmless enough, but my instincts told me I needed to act fast. The shadow lunged forward. Instinct took over. I ducked to the side, darting for the narrow gap where the door used to be. I twisted the handle in desperation, but it wouldn't budge. I beat my palm against the door, heart racing. "Let me out!" The creature laughed, a harsh, rasping sound that sent chills down my spine. "You don't get to leave," it hissed, its voice low and mocking. With one last attempt, I turned and faced it fully. The creature had halved the space between us in an instant. I searched the room, eyes darting for any escape. Then I spotted it, a window near the ceiling, barely large enough for my body to fit through. I ran toward the medical cart, scrambling to pull it closer. Utilizing every ounce of strength, I pushed it against the wall, using it as a makeshift ladder. But as I climbed, the creature stalked nearer, its footsteps echoing like a death knell. I reached the top, grasping the windowsill. I needed to move quickly. My fingers barely found the edge when I realized it was watching me, calculating. That twisted grin hadn't left its face. As I hoisted myself up, a sharp pain shot through my side. The creature's claws had snagged my shirt. Adrenaline surged, fueling my resolve. I yanked myself out of the window, tumbling into the cold night air. I landed hard, rolling across unforgiving gravel as stars swirled overhead. For a moment I lay still, gasping for breath. The night sky felt calming compared to the nightmare I had just escaped. But it was short-lived. A growl reverberated from within the building, followed by a crash. The creature didn't care that I had escaped. It would find me. I staggered to my feet, scanning my surroundings for a shelter. Then I saw lights in the distance. A small building stood, faintly illuminated. It looked like an old guardhouse or a maintenance shed. Hope surged within me, but fear nagged at my consciousness. If I ran in there, would I be safe? Or would I only rush into another trap? A low hiss echoed from behind me. The creature had come outside and its eyes glowed like embers in the dark. I couldn't think. I had to move. With a final glance at the relentless shadow, I sprinted toward the lights, burrowing hope deep down. If there were people inside, maybe I wouldn't be alone anymore. Just as I reached the door, I stopped. Something told me to look back. Through the shadows, I saw the figure linger at the window, staring into the abyss. It was waiting, savoring the hunt. I pushed the door open, heart pounding as I stepped inside. The smell of old wood and metal greeted me. I was safe, at least for now. But as I turned to lock the door, I knew the real question loomed before me. What awaited me inside? The door slammed shut behind me, and I locked it just in time. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the familiar sounds of the night. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. All I wanted was a moment of calm, but the reality of what had just happened pressed heavy on my chest. I quickly scanned the room. The dim light cast shadows on the walls, revealing various tools and old furniture. A desk in the corner was cluttered with papers, and a small lamp flickered precariously. The last thing I wanted to do was stay in one place for too long, yet I had nowhere else to go. I hesitated, knowing the creature was still out there. The memory of its twisted grin sent a shiver down my spine. I tiptoed toward the desk, looking for anything that might help. Papers crinkled beneath my fingers as I hurriedly sifted through them. Reports, charts, nothing useful. Just my luck. Suddenly a loud crash reverberated from outside the guardhouse. My adrenaline spiked. The creature had moved closer. I felt the walls closing in around me. I dashed to the front window, carefully peering out. The dark figure moved like a phantom, gliding across the gravel outside. It seemed to be searching for something, its eyes glowing in the night. Panic set in. I needed to find a way to defend myself, or at least an escape route if it got inside. I turned my back to the window and started rummaging through an old toolbox on the shelf. It was rusty and filled with random junk. A wrench, a flashlight that barely flickered. And then my fingers closed around the cold metal of a small knife. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. With the knife gripped tightly in my hand, I approached the back of the guardhouse. Maybe there was a rear exit. The building creaked ominously as I moved. I pushed open a door, revealing a storage closet. Nothing but old brooms and a stack of faded first aid kits. I felt a rush of frustration. I had hoped for more. That's when I stumbled upon something odd. One of the first aid kits had a strange marking on it. It looked like a symbol, carved deep into the wood. I traced my fingers over it, feeling a mixture of curiosity and dread. It almost looked like the creature's twisted face, contorted in that haunting grin. Before I could dissect its meaning, a loud bang resonated from the front door. The creature was testing the lock. I gasped and darted back, knife raised. The old building trembled as the figure slammed its weight against the door. I needed to act fast. The windows were too high to reach now. I glanced around, searching for anything to barricade the door. I spotted a large shelving unit. It was a risk, but I shoved it toward the door, heart racing as I pulled with all my strength. As I wedged it into place, I heard the splintering of wood. The creature was coming, and it was furious. The door trembled. I was out of time. Then, just when I thought hope was lost, a loud crash echoed through the darkness. The door burst open, and I found myself staring into an abyss of glowing eyes. But there was something else in the shadows, a silhouette of a man. "Who are you?" I shouted, panic seeping into every word. But as he raised his hand to speak, a chilling sound drowned him out. The creature had entered the room, and everything went dark. The darkness enveloped me just as the chaos erupted. I could barely register the figure amidst the shadows. My heart raced and my senses screamed for escape. The man's voice was lost beneath the growl that resonated in my bones. Before I could make sense of what had happened, the air shifted. A cold breeze swept through the guardhouse. The man let out a startled gasp, and the creature's hungry growl echoed in the small space, vibrating through our bodies. In that moment, an instinctive urge surged within me. It was survival against an insatiable predator. With trembling hands, I gripped the small knife tighter. "Get back," I shouted, trying to ward off the creature as it shifted, its dark outline moving closer, eyes ablaze. The man seemed paralyzed, caught off guard by the sudden turmoil. "Move!" I yelled again, my voice sharp with urgency. He snapped out of his daze, and together we stumbled back against the cluttered desk. My breath felt like fire as the creature prowled closer, its growl reverberating in my chest like a drumbeat. With a surge of desperation, I dashed to the other side of the desk, grasping the flashlight I had fumbled with earlier. I flicked it on, casting a beam of light toward the figure lurking in the shadows. The beam caught the creature in its stark brilliance, momentarily revealing the horror of its form. The twisted shape, sharp claws glinting in the dim light, teeth bared in a grimace that chilled me to the core. The man beside me gasped, losing his balance and nearly falling. "What is that thing?" he managed to stammer, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I shouted back, aligning the flashlight again. My heart raced as I glanced at the door, now wide open. For a fleeting moment, I thought about escape, about running into the night. But then the laughter broke free, echoing throughout the space, reminding me of the girl, Emily. She needed help. "Help her!" I shouted, directing my fear into purpose as I felt a surge of resolve. "We have to find her." "Are you insane? We need to run," he pleaded, backing away slowly. "I am not leaving without her." I gritted through my teeth, gripping the knife in one hand and the flashlight in the other. Just as I prepared to dash past the creature, claws poised to strike, I felt a pull within the room, like something was resonating with the darkness, an energy begging to be harnessed. Memories flooded my mind. The shadow that had taunted me through the hospital, the urgent whispers, the girl crying for help. Could there be a way to confront this entity rather than flee? Reaching deep within myself, I steeled my resolve and shouted, "Emily, we're here. We're not leaving you." To my surprise, the creature hesitated. The air stilled, the growl less pronounced. I had taken a bold step forward, one that fueled the shadows and invoked the light of my determination. I whispered a silent promise, sensing something had shifted. I caught a glimpse of Emily's image in my mind, her pleading eyes urging me to make a choice, fear or courage. I took a deep breath and advanced. With sudden ferocity, I flung the flashlight directly at the creature and followed up with a lunge, armed with the knife. Light flew across the room, catching the creature completely off guard. It staggered back as the light broke its menacing aura, revealing wisps of dark smoke swirling away. The growl morphed into a wail, then silence. "Now," I shouted at the man, "we have to go." But the man hesitated. "What about Emily?" I yelled, drowning out his fear with that singular focus. I bolted toward the entrance, fueled by adrenaline, thinking of little else but finding her. As we reached the doorway, I could see the creature thrashing amidst shadows, struggling against the light. For a fleeting moment, it froze, its shape contorting into wisps of darkness before dissipating. I turned around, half expecting it to return, but the hallway beyond was eerily quiet. An unyielding stillness replaced the cacophony of terror. "Quick!" I called back, feeling a rush of triumph just as nothing seemed to follow us. We dashed into the hallway, the oppressive air lifting slightly, allowing for breath. But ahead, the silence felt wrong. I stopped short, turning to the man. "Do you feel that?" He nodded, his eyes scanning the dim corridor. Bare walls loomed over us as if looming threats still lurked just beyond our sight. I took a moment to collect myself. "We need to find Emily," I urged, heart racing as apprehension crept back in. "If she's here, we can't leave without her." That resolved us to push forward, cautiously moving deeper into the dimly lit corridors where shadows flickered against our every move. As we pressed on, I felt her presence, a pulling feeling guiding me toward the answers I sought, uncertain if we would succeed or become part of the darkness. Suddenly, the air inside the building thickened again. I glanced over my shoulder to see if the creature had re-emerged, but it didn't. Yet, the whispers returned in a deafening rush. "Help! Help!" echoed as a cold energy washed over me, battling against the warmth of my resolve. As we turned another corner, I heard it, a soft voice, ethereal and pleading. "Help!" It wove through the air, guiding me along an unseen path. "There!" I pointed down the hall, breathless. There she was, a faint light flickered in the distance, matched by the outline of a little girl, her dress billowing gently like she belonged among the echoes of time. "Emily!" I called, racing toward her. But just as we approached, I felt a presence shift behind me. The growl returned, and a sense of dread washed over me. "Run!" I shouted at the man, determination ignited within me even as shadows gathered. I couldn't look back, couldn't afford to lose any moment. I couldn't let Emily slip away again. In that instant, I bolted toward her, the world around me swirling with chaos. I reached for Emily just as she seemed to step into the light. The glow shimmered, surrounding us both, warding off the encroaching shadows. And then, in one swift moment, we were enveloped in a warm light. Normalcy returned, yet the questions remained. I opened my eyes, shock evaporating into confusion. The guardhouse was gone. Instead, we stood in an empty field, covered in twilight, with the hospital still looming in the distance behind us, a reminder of what I had faced. Emily nodded with a serene smile, as if having chosen to linger in my mind, a memory suspended in time. I turned to the man, bewildered as he blinked in disbelief. What had truly happened? Had we really escaped, or was it just an illusion? The presence of darker truths lingered unexplained, hanging heavy in the air. I took one last look back at the shadowy structure of the hospital. A sense of relief washed over me, mingling with lingering trepidation. Maybe leaving wasn't the end of it, I murmured, grappling with lingering thoughts about what I couldn't comprehend. As the first stars shimmered overhead, I knew some questions would remain unanswered. I moved forward, not knowing where the road would lead, but determined not to forget.